where the experts meet. Online learning, practical and sweet. Every Saturday, 9 a.m. Central Time. YouTube, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. Online.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to UroNurse. I'm your host, Vic Senese. Nice to have everybody here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You really help out the show. We got a great show for you today. Dr. Xavier, founder of Urology Partners, is a fellowship-trained urologist specializing in minimally invasive treatments for bladder and prostate conditions, including overactive bladder and incontinence. Inspired by his physician parents, he is known for building strong, trust-based relationships with his patients. Trained at Columbia University in female urology, neurology, and stone disease, he brings advanced expertise in treating both men and women. Today, he's going to be discussing the Medtronic Altaviva and its role in urge incontinence. Let's welcome Dr. Xavier to the show. Dr. Xavier, welcome to the show. How are you doing today? How are you doing today, Dr. Xavier?
Hi, thanks, Vic, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Once again, my name's Keith Xavier. I'm a urologist here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Honored to be here this morning talking about the Altaviva tibial nerve implant. I'm in a large private practice urology group here in Dallas-Fort Worth. There's actually about 30 of us, so it's a very large group. We see a lot of patients. I have a specialty in female and male pelvic medicine, incontinence, overactive bladder, things like that. So I have a strong interest in especially overactive bladder, different treatments, sacral neuromodulation, Botox, now implantable tibial nerve stimulation. So yeah, very happy to be here this morning and to talk a little bit about this product and answer questions anyone may have about it.
We're anxious to learn more about it. I read some articles on Altaviva, but I haven't had anybody presenting on it. So you're our first. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up your slides. Just let me know when you need me to advance to the next. Just say next slide, and it's all yours.
Sure. Okay. Yep. Next slide. Okay. Just a little bit about this product. So the Altaviva, it's a minimally invasive procedure. Roughly takes about 10 minutes. It's done just with local anesthesia, so no general anesthesia. It's for patients with refractory urge incontinence and overactive bladder. So those are those patients that are having accidents, leakage episodes. They can't get to the toilet on time, men and women. So no sedations required for this. Once again, it's done with local. You can activate the device the same day, and the device lasts roughly about 15 years. So there's a little picture of it there and where it goes. It goes on the inside of the ankle. So it's very small. It's very sleek. Almost looks like a little zip drive. Great engineering by Medtronic. Next slide, Vic. I'm going to talk a little bit about the pivotal phase 3 FDA study for this device. It was a multi-center study, 26 sites, single arm. Really, the goal was for this Altaviva device reaching a 40% goal of patients that were greater than 50% in terms of their accidents and their leaks. So the goal was a 40% mark. And to get this FDA approved, this important clinical trial took place. So next slide. To qualify for the trial, you had to be 18 years or older. You had to fill out a voiding diary for 72 hours and have at least 3 episodes of urge incontinence. To qualify for the study, you had to have urge incontinence for at least 6 months. Okay, you could not be on any overactive bladder medications like Mirabetric and Vesicare for at least 2 weeks before the diary was filled out. You had to have failed conservative treatment, and you had to have failed or been intolerant to at least 2 overactive bladder medications. So it was a relatively, you had to meet a tall bar to qualify for the study. Next slide. Here's some characteristics of the 126 patients for this FDA study. The average age was about 63. The vast majority were females. If you look at the BMI is about 35, so it's a relatively high BMI population. Majority were Caucasian patients. Average 7 years of urge incontinence, right? So these are patients who've had this for quite a while. Now, if you look at the baseline urge incontinence episodes a day, the average starting number was about 5.1. So that's a very significant number there. That means the average patient in this trial was having 5 episodes of leakage a day. So that's quite significant. That's quite severe, I would say. A lot of patients will have 1 episode, 2 episodes a day, 3 episodes per day. The average patient in this study was 5 episodes a day. So we would call that a pretty significant wet population, meaning lots of leakage there. The baseline frequency episodes a day was roughly 13. So on average, these patients were going 13 times a day to the toilet. You may ask, well, what's the normal amount of times? It should be less than 8 times a day in a 24-hour period. So the patients, in addition to significant incontinence, also had significant urinary frequency. Also, roughly 30% of the patients had tried previous advanced therapies, including Botox, percutaneous tibial nerve stimulation, and sacral neuromodulation. Okay, and that would be something like InterStim. Next slide. So here's the results. Okay, so 59% of patients had greater than 50% improvement in their urge incontinence episodes during this trial. So this met the goal, which was 40%. Okay, the change in frequency episodes per day, if you recall, the average was around 13 a day. This dropped by about 2.5 episodes a day. Okay, so that was significant. Also, I think what's really significant is the urge incontinence change per day. If you see there on the slide, minus 2.8 leaks per day. Okay, that's very significant. We said that the average patient was 5 leaks a day for the study. So with this device, on average, they dropped almost 3 leaks a day. So that's a lot. That's great. That's excellent. That's sort of life-changing in a way. If you can imagine, a patient they're having episodes of leakage, they're wetting themselves 5 times a day. With this device, on average, they're down to 2 times a day. Okay, but they're not perfect. They're not zero. Although we may get to that. About 20% of patients actually during this study, the leakage totally went away. They had 0 episodes of leakage. So there was a 20% of the patients in this study who were pretty severe patients, like we said initially. 20% actually went to 0 leaks a day, but on average, patients went from about 5 to 2 leaks a day. So I think that's very significant. There's also a significant change there in the quality of life questionnaire there, plus 27.1. Next slide. This is just a graph that showed the response to leakage episodes. If you could see there, from baseline to 6 months, it's a steady decline in leakage episodes to 2.8, and then that stayed stable for the next 6 months. So in essence, this stayed stable over 12 months. Okay, once you hit, really took to that 6-month mark to really kind of level off and get to that significant improvement, and then it stayed. The device stayed working. It continued to work, for up to a year there on this slide. Next slide. Okay, this is the urinary frequency episodes. Kind of similar. If you look from baseline to 6 months, it dropped by 2.5 episodes. If you look from 6 to 12 months, patients actually continued to show further improvement by dropping another 0.6 episodes a day. So this actually showed continued efficacy to 12 months in the number of times patients went to the bathroom a day. Next slide. This is just a slide on urgency. There was an improvement in A global sense of urgency, it's a questionnaire scale. Next slide. And this is a quality of life maintained through 12 months. So there was clinically significant improvement there, 25.8. If you look to the right there, 71% of patients at 6 months described clinically meaningful improvement in their quality of life, and that stayed stable at 12 months. That was 70%. So a year into the study, after getting the device, 70% of patients had clinically meaningful improvement in their quality of life. So I think that's very important. Next slide. Okay, so here are some key results here. 80% of patients reported the condition had improved compared to before the implant. So 4 and 5 patients had improvement, okay? 76% of patients say they would recommend this to friend and family. That's very important, 3 out of 4. And then 70% of patients experience, as we mentioned before, meaningful improvement in quality of life. At 1 year after the implant, 61% of patients had greater than 50% improvement in their urge incontinence episodes. So once again, that is leakage when you can't get to the toilet on time. What we know with overactive bladder, and roughly 40 million Americans have overactive bladder. What we know is it's typically the leakage, the urge incontinence, the not getting to the toilet and having the wetting accidents. That is the most bothersome for patients, more so than going to the bathroom all the time. So if you look at this population, once again, a very significant population in terms of significant leakage. It wasn't just a mild population that leaked here and there. These were patients that leaked 5 times a day. 61% of those patients by 12 months had a greater than 50% improvement with this device. Next slide. And this is just a graph on some of these endpoints that we mentioned. If you look at the right side, that bar graph there, this is an improvement in their condition. 82% of patients at 6 months reported that. 80% of patients at 12 months. And if you could look, this study went through 24 months, okay, with the device. So patients reporting improvement in their condition lasted at 80% through 24 months, through 2 years. So that shows this device doesn't just work and stop working. When it works, it continues to work. And, this shows that it continues to work over 24 months. Next slide. Now this is important, right? People may be wondering, okay, well, what's the downside here? What's the catch? Okay, so with any FDA pivotal trial, adverse events, safety is imperative. It's very important. So 20% of the 126 patients did have adverse events, okay? The most common adverse events were pain and infection, okay? There was a 7%, what we called as being investigators in the study, an infection rate. Now, what I'll tell you that means is, and I had a few patients that met this criteria of, of the infection rate. We were very conservative post-op with if patients, if there maybe was redness, we weren't sure, the wound looked a little strange. We weren't really sure if there was an infection or not, but we were very conservative, and we would go ahead and treat the patients with antibiotics afterwards if there was any question. Those patients became included as an adverse event and as an infection. Now, I'll be honest, most of these I don't feel truly were infections. Most of them probably didn't even need antibiotics, but listen, this is a pivotal trial. We've got a document, and anytime that happens, it has to be listed as an infection. If you look at explants, out of the 126 patients throughout the trial, throughout the 26 sites, 3 explants were done, okay? Now, 1 was planned because a patient needed surgery with hardware in that area near the ankle. So for that, the device had to be removed. Now, the 2 other explants, 1 was actually for some leg pain. An explant was done. Only one of them was for a wound infection, and that wound infection actually resolved. It resolved with antibiotics, but there was still an explant done. So it wasn't an active infection requiring it, but nonetheless, the infection resolved and an explant was done. There was one serious adverse event. It was a C. diff infection, and 0% unanticipated adverse effects. Next slide. Okay, and this is just some safety information there regarding Altaviva from Medtronic. Kind of basic safety information labeling stuff there. Next slide. And
That's it. That was your last slide. All right. So interested if you could take us through the kind of nuts and bolts of what's involved in placing one of these Altaviva tibial nerve stimulators.
Yeah, sure, Vic. So once again, this device is FDA approved for males and females with urge-related incontinence. That is leakage when you can't get to the toilet on time, okay? A lot of you are familiar with sacral neuromodulation, such as InterStem. That's an option. Intravesical Botox injections to calm the bladder down. That's an option. Implantable tibial nerve stimulation is a third option, okay? And Altaviva is actually the third device that's come to market in that category, okay? And there are definitely some, I would say, market improvements with this device compared to comparative devices that are already out there. Once again, it's done with local anesthesia. The rough time that it takes to do is about 10 minutes. So it's a 2-centimeter incision done near the ankle. Okay, it's a much smaller incision than the other options out there, than the other implantable tibial devices out there. Those are 5-centimeter incisions. So this leads to shorter procedural time, less discomfort for patients, less post-op swelling and pain. Okay, it's done with local 2-centimeter incision, and you guys were able to see the device. It's very tiny, skinny, looks like a zip drive, and you just slide it in under the skin through that 2-centimeter incision. There's a nice little tool that we have that does the whole procedure for you. It does the dissection, creates the pocket. Patients do very well with this. In my experience, I've probably, including all the trials, etc., I've probably done 40 of these things at least. And it's funny, patients are just laying there, they're talking to the nurse while I'm doing it, and before they know it, we're done. So you put the device in, then you put in a few sutures, and that's it. And you can go ahead and activate it the same day. It's very nice in that the same day activation, it's the only device on the market that allows you to activate it same day. The other devices out there, you have to wait a month to activate it. So patients are very happy with this, that they don't have to wait. It's like instant gratification. They can get it, and we can get it working the same day. So I think that's very that's a nice thing about it. It's a 15-year battery, so it lasts 15 years. It does need to be recharged at least once a year, maybe twice a year, depending on the settings. And that's fairly easy to do, and there's notices when that happens. We can do it in the office, or patients can easily do it at home. And then there's different settings. You can have it come on certain times of the day, different days of the week. What we typically do is we will have it come on for 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, and that's where we'll start it off. Usually it's 9 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we can make adjustments from there. So it's a fairly quick, relatively simple, designed well, procedure. A lot of urologists have now been doing this and have tried this out. It's been FDA approved since September, so not quite a year. It just gives us another tool to help men and women with refractory overactive bladder and urge incontinence. It's minimally invasive. It's non-surgical, and the vast majority of patients are happy to try it out, and are happy with their experience with it so far.
So now, is this something you can do in the office, or do you have to take them into for an outpatient?
That's a great question. It could be done anywhere. It could be done in the office. It could be done in a surgery center or a hospital, right? A lot of it is dependent on your particular situation, where you are, where you practice, reimbursement for the device. All that has to come in play. But I'll tell you this: for the study, for the clinical study that I just described, a third of the patients were done in a hospital, a third of the patients were done in an ambulatory surgery center, and a third of the patients were done in the office. So, ideally, this is an office procedure, and
Yeah.
patients just, they just walk into the office, get it done, and drive home. That's what we do in the surgery center, to be honest with you. Also, patients actually drive there, get it done, and they drive home. They don't have to fast. There's no prep because it's all done with local. I think all these things. There's the um, reimbursement, insurance component of it, which always muddies things up. But ideally, this thing, and I think it'll get there very soon. It'll just be done in the office. That's the sweet spot.
Now, we have a lot of advanced practice nurses that are working in urology now. Is this something that advanced practice is doing also? Do you know if that was something that
Yeah, I'm
advanced
sorry.
practice,
I think if you asked is
advanced practice nursing, are they
yes.
able to do the implant?
Obviously, advanced nurses that are listening to this now, they're involved in a lot of OAB procedures. A lot of them are doing percutaneous nerve evaluations with InterStem in the office. A lot of them are doing Botox. I highly anticipate that they will start doing this, especially when it gets done more and more in the office, right? The doctor can be off seeing patients or doing other things. And absolutely, I think physician assistant, nurse practitioners can do this. I actually think it has a less steep learning curve than P&Es do. And a lot of APPs now are doing P&Es and are very good at them, and they do them. I think this is a very similar type concept that as more and more of this, obviously doctors have to become comfortable with it first, and it's fairly easy to become comfortable with this. So I definitely see in the near future APPs doing a lot of these types of procedures.
And as far as the programming goes, is this something patients come into the office? Is there a office programmer, or the patients have their own programmers? How is that done?
Yeah, so there just like with InterStem, there is a programming device that patients go home with, okay? We basically tell them not to mess with it, that it's just kind of a set it and forget it type thing, okay? Now, we will periodically have them come to the office. We have a master clinician programmer in the office, okay? So when they come into the office, we are able to make changes in terms of the intensity of the stimulation. So we turn up the amplitude. We can change the days, the times, the length of duration. Now, patients are also able to do that at home. Okay, so they can do it, but for the most part, they just will turn up the amplitude. Right? Maybe it's at 1.0 and they stop feeling it, so they'll turn it up a little to maybe 1.2 or 1.3. So that's something they do. We typically don't want them really changing the time or the length. That's something that we like to do, and we like to keep this procedure, this device, mostly as a set it and forget it. Where
Looks like we had a little dropout on your feed.
I'm sorry.
Like that's all right. It just dropped out temporarily.
Do you want me to repeat that last part?
Yeah, I think if you could, just the very last, it just went out a few minutes, about a
Yeah.
minute.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, there's some of the streaming's coming in and out, so I do apologize. What I was saying is, for the most part, this is set it and forget it. The patients are able to make changes to recharge it, to turn up the amplitude, the intensity of the device. We usually don't want them to change how often they do it or how often the stimulation is. We like to do that, so we tell
Mhm.
patients, listen, don't mess with it. Just let us do it when you come in. If you want, you can turn up the amplitude and the intensity, but just sit back. Don't worry about it. Enjoy the therapy. Let us do it.
We do have a question that came in. From a patient perspective, what are the biggest benefits? And are we talking improved outcomes, better engagement, or earlier intervention?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, listen, this gives us in a very, this is a very minimally invasive option. It can be used very early on in the OAB process. A lot of patients, I know the audience has seen this, they're very frustrated with OAB and their condition. A lot of, a lot of patients are, and a lot of them have done medications. A lot of them, have seen different doctors, providers, things like that. I think this device, this Altaviva device, it can be done very early on. It can be done right away, and patients they can identify with it. You show them the tiny little device, you tell them about it, you tell them, look, this is non-surgical. You're awake. It takes 10 minutes. It's done with numbing medicine. You're back to your day-to-day activities. For the most part, right away. You're back to work. We can get this thing working right away. Patients hear that and become very interested. So I think this can be offered very early in the journey. Okay, we always will offer conservative therapy, no doubt. Medications are usually offered, but what we see with medications is a lot of patients don't want to take medication, or they've tried them, or there's side effects,
Side
or they're
effects,
too
yeah.
expensive. So um, that does become an issue. Okay, and this is something, if you look at the results, it's positioned there, it's I tell patients it's works about as well as about as well as Botox and sacral neuromodulation. There's not much of a difference there.
So you would put it up there as pretty equal to sacral nerve stimulations. You you would consider it kind of equivalent to
Sorry,
sacral
having
nerve
having some
stimulation?
issues there. Yeah, the feed's kind of coming in and out. Can you hear me, Vic?
Yeah, I can
Now?
hear you fine. I know we did have mentioned that there was some internet dropout.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I've got you back now. Yeah, I'm sorry. The feed's kind of coming in and out, so
Yeah.
apologize. I'm not sure why that is, but
Why
but
why
hopefully
it's
you
called
caught what I said
Wi-Fi.
about in terms of counseling patients on this. Really trying to apply it early on. Yeah,
So I was
yeah.
asking as far
That's
as
that
comparison with
that
sacral
definitely can
nerve
be it.
stimulation, because that procedure you've got, to place the test leads, see if it works, then do the implant, and it's a lot of monkeying around. You're saying this is working as well, and it's a one and done.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think sacral neuromodulation's been out, 30 years. There's lots of data. That's the gold
Yeah.
standard, okay? And I think a lot of us still believe if patients are serious, or are advanced enough, have enough leakage, their symptoms are severe enough, sacral neuromodulation is still a great option, okay? But what I've seen with this is this can be introduced anywhere in the pathway, especially earlier on. Okay, I think a lot of patients are willing to try this even before sacral neuromodulation, because sacral neuromodulation, it's great, but it is 2 steps. It does require a surgical procedure. Okay, this doesn't, and so this is a good, this could be a good option for patients who they don't want surgery. They don't want an implant in their
Mhm.
backside. They want to try something maybe a little bit less invasive. I think Altaviva is a great option for that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really exciting new development in treating this problem because, those people that suffer, this is really a major problem for their, lifestyle and quality of life issues. So that's great that there's more options out there. I'm going to do a quick promo for next week's show, and then we'll get back to you for any final comments or things you may want to say. So coming up next week.
Opportunistic pathogens are everywhere in the healthcare environment, and when the conditions are right, they can become dangerous. In this episode of UroNurse, we break down what opportunistic pathogens are, where they thrive, and why they pose a serious risk to vulnerable patient populations. From catheter-associated infections to contaminated surfaces and immunocompromised patients, this video explores the real-world impact of pathogens like Pseudomonas, Candida, and Clostridioides difficile. Learn how these organisms take advantage of weakened defenses and discover practical, evidence-based strategies to reduce infection risk in hospitals, clinics, and long-term care settings. Whether you're a nurse, advanced practice provider, infection prevention specialist, or healthcare student, this episode delivers must-know insights to help protect your patients and yourself. Join us on May 2nd at 9 a.m. Central Time to learn more.
Yeah, so that'll be next week. Just be sure to join us. It's also going to have one free contact hour with it. So, Dr. Xavier, any final thoughts you have for us?
No, once again, I think myself, a lot of my colleagues were very excited about this space, overactive bladder, and especially this device. Like I said, there's lots of choices out there, and there are so many patients with this condition that really that really cripples their lives, their day-to-day activity, what they can do, leaving the house, going out, going to restaurants, and more choices are better. Okay. Once again, sacral neuromodulation is great, but some people don't want that. Some people are not candidates for that. Botox, we're all familiar with that. It works well, but you have to come in every 6 months. People get fatigued from that. Some people don't want that. Some people don't want Botox. So tibial nerve stimulation, it's in the ankle. It doesn't make sense why it works on the bladder, right? But it does. And it's great that we now have another option, another minimally invasive option. I think this Medtronic device really, hits the mark in terms of ingenuity, innovation, technology. 15 years, patients don't have to do anything. Really, they don't really know it's there in the ankle, big ankles, small ankles. You implant these, you really can't see them. It's quite amazing. So I think more and more patients, as they learn about more treatments out there, will start talking about this with their doctors. That's what we want. We want to treat more patients and give them the chance to regain their life and their freedom. So very excited about Altaviva, and hopefully, the audience learned a little bit today. Sorry about the technical snafus there, but I hope everyone sort of got the gist of what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us. It's been a great presentation, and hey, we'll see everybody next week on UroNurse.com.
So here's to the mornings, the coffee, the monitor glow, to the wisdom he shares and the folks that he knows. Saturday is special when Vic's on the stream with 40 years of knowledge and a head full of dreams.